AR at Advertising Week. Before we start a couple slides, I want to give a setup for where the market is right now. If you look at AR, virtual reality devices are going to be sold by the end of this year. 70 million VR-enabled smartphones are going to ship this year. This is a story that ran in the IoT Daily today. It's a 500% increase in unit sales of VR headsets from last year. 500%, so it's growing. It's not a small market. $2 billion will be spent on virtual and augmented reality headsets this year, and this is not talking about cardboard. We're talking about real virtual and augmented reality headsets in 2020. Even if those are off by some magnitude, I'll just take pictures or whatever. If anybody wants to see a slide, you can also have them. All of this has been published in the IoT Daily, basically just re-aggregated of our information. Okay. If you are 74% want travel and tourism adventure, 60% movies and recorded videos, 67% live events, 66% home design, and 64% games. So it's not about me in terms of what interests consumers, it's a lot of other things. We know it started many years ago. Look at who they're expecting it to come from. They want these content providers, or expect these content providers will provide their VR content. 64% from an online company, 61% from a video game company, 57% from a music or brand, and 53% media company. So this is working. Today's agenda, what we're really going to be doing is tackling all of the issues around the realities, virtual, augmented, and mixed, which a lot of people are talking about these days, obviously. In terms of discussion today, we're going to have a panel on the new brand storytelling, the best ways to approach VR and AR, and this will be participated with top execs and leading thinkers from Razorfish, Moxie, USA Today Network, Digital Pulp, Sapient Nitro, and RAIN. We're going to have a keynote address, some very interesting stuff that Absolute Labs has done, the vodka maker, obviously. They've done a couple of really phenomenal leading-edge projects, and you're going to get a detail of what that looks like and how they went about doing it and what they learned and learned to do and not to do. Then we're going to have a discussion by Dave Meeker, VP of Isobar US. I don't know if Dave is here yet, but we've been covering Dave quite a lot of his leading thoughts about where VR is really going in the short term and the long term. And there really are differences in terms of where this is going to all play out over the next few years. Then there's Pokemon. Who here plays Pokemon Go? Anybody beyond a level 10? Anybody beyond a level 20? Your moderator is beyond a level. Although he's got an 8-year-old son, so anyway. But that'll be Almighty, Pop, Kinetic Worldwide, and Blue Text. Then which all of these leading edge things, we need to know what not do. What did you learn? Those who haven't done it yet, what we're going to outline for you is not to do in a VR project from people who have learned some bumps along the way. And this is going to be participated by execs from Big Spaceship, Hill Holiday, Giant Spoon, MediaPost Spark, and Ignition Factory. So it's a great lineup of leading thinkers. A lot of these people have been deep into this stuff for some time, despite the brand necessarily pushing them yet, but the brand will be a long piece of stuff that's going on for some very big brands. This is a quote from John Pinnell I talked to a few weeks ago at one of the conferences at eTail East. He's the VP of Commerce for Sapient Nitro. In AR, the agencies are absolutely driving it because it's a concept and because the breadth of customers that the agency community has, it can be driven into very many spaces right now and justifiable. The justifiable means cost justifiable. VR is a little more challenging. As dipped into that, no, it's a little more expensive. A comment from the Pokemon Go phenomenon on AR has raised the profile of VR, bringing the power of the medium into the mainstream, just as major brands and publishers have begun to tap into its breathtakingly immersive capabilities. So AR and VR they're going up 100 right now. This is an example of Pokemon Go. This was a week ago. I wasn't out there to play Pokemon Go. I won't tell you my level, but I'll be on 20, I'm not on 20, just for the record. But I was out in Marblehead, Massachusetts on the water, and this is just a scene of what people are doing. Normally you would go to a place like this, kind of enjoy the ocean and the sunshine and everything. And I just want you to see what people are doing in this beautiful setting. It turned out the word on the street was there were a lot of Pokemons in Marblehead. So all these people, except this woman and the dog, she's the only person not playing. But everybody there was playing Pokemon Go. And there were families, children, adults, millennials, I mean, every demo. Anyway, it was like that insanely, and we just kind of watched it for an hour, and I'm not sure anyone recognized there was actually an ocean there. And lastly, I'm going to show you a quick background video, just a couple minutes of it. And I know some of you have seen this, but this is what some people are doing at kind of big ticket items, if you will. This is done by Lockheed, and this is converting a school bus for children to take them on a trip to Mars. So, Rob, if you could play the video. It's coming.
When I first heard about the project, my reaction was, this is out.
You had to invent a group VR experience. I mean, how the hell do you turn an entire bus into a headset?
They wanted to put the school kids on a bus and make it feel as if they were driving. You come on the bus, you can look out the windows. As the experience begins, what you see out the windows now turns to the surface of Mars.
But
now to the surface of Mars. In order to pull this off, we had to figure out how to create this experience of a bus driving through Mars. And the first thing we had to solve was, how do we do this? And we determined that we would do it in Game Engine, and we used Unreal to do that.
The Unreal Engine is a physically based renderer, meaning that it wants to simulate the real world perfectly. To enable us to simulate the Martian environment, that brought its own set of challenges where we had to go in and tweak stuff and art direct stuff to try and coerce the physically based into the look that we wanted for the Mars landscape.
When the bus is driving down the road at 30 miles an hour, you are moving 30 miles an hour. What you see on the screen moves according to what you're feeling inside the bus. When you turn left and when you turn right, you turn left and right on Mars.
How do you take a huge landscape where we can take the bus and drive it anywhere? So the way to execute that was to have a system where we could render Mars in real time. I think the drivable area that we created was 250 square miles.
We mapped every street in Washington, D.C. on the surface of Mars. So wherever we started the experience, you would start off on that exact same road at that exact same intersection on Mars. And to accurately drive the surface of Mars, we used a combination of GPS, 3-axis accelerometer, magnetometer, and a laser surface velocimeter. There is a laser, absolutely. What that laser does is one simple job. It points a laser down on the ground and it tells you how far you've gone forward or backward. It does one thing very, very well. We had to invent a way for transparent windows to be high definition. It's achieved by a box that we created that contains a 4K transparent display and then a layer of switchable film. The switchable film goes from clear to opaque, and then the display turns into Mars.
We all knew that the screens needed to be transparent.
Okay, so you get the idea. I'll give you the website if anybody wants to look at it. It's quite a long video. I just wanted to give you a couple minutes of it to give you a feel. It gives you an idea of the depth of expenditure process that is behind a lot of sophisticated VR projects. They're not all like this, but you need to make sure basically that the brands are behind it. To list this off now, we've got Eric Grant to take off our story panel. He's a creative director of Razor Experiences Business, where he leads a team that creates interactive experiences that live on screen, physical spaces, and on virtual. Please join me in welcoming Eric and his panel.
Thank you. Hello. So I just want to kick off and let you guys introduce yourselves. Keep it short, and then we'll kick off with some questions.
Jerry Hudson. I run a Future Experiences group at Moxie in Atlanta.
Michael Kuntz. I am the head of digital revenue at the USA Today Network.
Gene Lewis. I'm Chief Creative Officer at Digital Pulp here in New York.
Daniela Lobo. I'm with Sapien Nitro and part of the planning team.
I'm Tim Whitney. I run our production studio and development at Rain, an agency here in the city.
So raise of hands, how many of you have tried VR experiences? What about AR, augmented reality experiences? It's about the same, about the less. So I guess the first question I want to talk about is just talk of both platforms.
Sure. So, I mean, some of the basics are always true. AR doesn't give you the kind of escape that you might otherwise experience in VR. And so I think the advantages of melding real world with augmented components makes certain things a little bit easier. I think about marketing and branding. You think about non-interrupted experiences where your life is allowed to continue while in augmented state. Whereas VR is a true escape. It's the experience that is intended to make you suffer your brain when you first. It's much more of an escape. So I think the opportunities for marketing and also now it's a bit more storytelling immersive versus real world connected, but that would be one way to consider.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference in scale. AR can reach a lot of people than VR can just out of the box. Depending on what your goals are with the activation, that can be a big difference in choosing the right technology and experience for the audience.
Yeah, I think that from a marketing standpoint, VR advantage right now. With that'll change. I think we get into more what some similar terms. You know, there's Pokemon right now. Pokemon is just kind of sitting out there. But what if Pokemon could hide behind these columns that we have here? And to me, that's the mixed reality. And when storytelling with that sort of non-immersive, artificial or alternate reality gets very interesting.
I think from a consumer standpoint, it's really interesting because what VR does, it's actually allows you to put into an experience that you control, right? So you control the narrative. But then, you know, if you mix AR with VR, what allows for brands is that allows brands to really connect with consumers, bring right surprises through AR in their VR experience. So this mix really creates right a strong connection between the brand and the consumer, and that's unique.
So when you're talking about storytelling and we think about the platform, do you think of it as just another medium? You know, when we say that the medium doesn't really matter whether you're designing something for a website or a mobile device or a wearable, is this just another extension, or you know, what role?
Take that. First, digital, this rethink.
That a network and face here and there, they've done well, they've all made a number of mistakes in terms of focus. They have the story itself. The audience that we were able to tap up through the new medium of VR, and not quite VR space yet, really, did so in a way where it allowed experience a really powerful work. There was empathy to draw from throughout that story, and there was some sort of visual pay there, which I think is really something that you ultimately want to work up to.
Yeah, and I think when you think about the correlates in our history, I'm dating myself, started 20 ago, and fast the first augmentation of the web let you express yourself with sound and more immersive visual experience, and able to now level wasn't informative, great for brands. And then you think about IMAX to movies or 3D to movies. They're all steps. This is a leap because it brings you to a space. It brings Disney World, Disneyland into your living room. I'm sure we all remember that first sort of VR ride we might have taken. They've had cheesy versions on the Empire State Building and the full-blown versions in Disney. And that's now even better, even more real. One small example from a content perspective, we're doing some work with nonprofits. And the curiosity situation, suddenly standing in the middle of chaos, would be covering an earthquake or, a surgery, and be too graphic, but you think about some of the of the world getting the emotional path. This is the most unbelievable thing. You can strap it on. It's not just about being there. It's about feeling what it's like to be there. And I think that's what makes it such a monumental shift.
And I think you called it experiential empathy, which I thought good.
Yeah, it is. It's about building experiential emotion, and quote what we're sort of. It's more terrifying, but because it does really require craft. It's no longer an image at a distance. It's now tangible. It's right in front of you. You're in it.
Yeah, when I actually think about even the media, and we could even say not around for years, right? Has been getting better and better, and we could even say that, this is chat, right? The Tinder was actually an immersive experience, so really a way to actually get consumers and get people into that transformative, that world. But what I think that it's interesting is VR actually as a medium to translate, right, to create a life in a way that actually we can create feelings. Because if a brand is able to create feelings, you're going to remember that brand. You're going to connect that brand with that brand much more than if a brand says something or does something, right? So that's the way I think about VR. Really media bring this and like what you talked about in terms of the craft, right? Yes, and that's why I always make this analogy. This is Chapel has a lot of making it right, make it special, but it's amazing.
I think a quick example of that innovation too. I can't remember which pharma company it is because I can't remember any of their names. But they created a VR experience where you experience the symptoms of whatever their medication. So I think the storytelling might not be the right word what we're doing in VR, but that's a great brand creating a feeling that then will motivate that consumer to take action ultimately that they're
How have you, with clients doing school, have you talked to them about you want to do AR when they really mean VR, talked about the language, and what's the process about educating them on this is and why you do it, and maybe something that, a 360 video isn't really VR, it's just a, 360 video. How do you do this?
It's usually Right after back from South by Southwest. You have to peel back the onion and try and figure out what's the actual root problem you're trying to solve, the action you're trying to consumer to take, and does VR actually achieve that? Or is there a way to, try and point the enthusiasm towards a goal that something that we can do and that'll be effective.
And I think one of the, we talk about the benefits and the barriers and the potential, and one of the biggest barriers is hardware, scale, and size. Yeah. And I love what you just said about the doctor experiencing the effect of either a condition or a medication. We're doing something similar in the visual space with pharma. Being able to allow a doctor, physician, surgeon to experience something in a first-hand way that normally they would never be able to experience is exceptionally powerful and unique. In my experience, as difficult as it is to lug the Acer computer and Oculus rig, we've done a number of times now, and almost every time we've done it, put that heads on and hit on demo that we've done. It is absolutely convincing. Most people, unlike this room, have not experienced it, and that first moment is all they really need to see the potential. That's not always the easiest thing to do. It's going to be much nicer when it's about that big and totally portable. So.
I think it's a mix between going back to the basics and really the foundation, right? So why you're doing, you're not using VR for the sake of using VR, but really because you can bring the same time, it's also creating that wow, right? So one can show the experience, right? Or have the client live in it. So you have a mix between rational and emotional, right? It starts getting you there, right? And then there is the executional piece that, these guys can talk much better about it than I can. And then they do a great job. So making it happen.
Expanding on that, when you talk about before the execution, through our digital life, the processes have evolved from doing websites for the past 20 years and now new experiences. Has there been a cultural shift? Have you noticed a change within your agency doing something different, media and publishers? How has that changed, or is it something that's constantly evolving that will always be evolving?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say in our case, we're running a content studio, so a bit different, of course, from the typical agency model. But yeah, it's exactly that. It's going to be an evolution in terms of being able to bring in, those into the studio who have the right skill set, which everybody knows here. Not too many of those people exist yet. So we were able to benefit from the fact that, as I mentioned before, our editors were in the field starting to really experiment with VR and 360 in the later part of 2014. And some of those that were behind the bigger hits that we had, we ultimately recruited into our studio team. And so that gave us an opportunity to really start to think differently around, what does this ultimately need to look like for brands? But most importantly, can we execute? And, being able to bring in those expertise for us. Now, we also, as we continue to scale that business, and we're having a lot more conversations with clients who are asking us to bring them ideas every day of the week, we now have to figure out, we only have X amount of people within the studio. How do we find those other guys? And I think we're all challenged with, again, there's no shortage of interest, and there's a number of people out there that know how to shoot video but don't know how to actually do it for the VR and 360 medium, and then more importantly, behind the scenes, stitch it all together so that it looks the way it needs to.
Yeah, I think the recruiting is something we're probably all hurting for. Yeah. So you look to build from internal, and I think for me, with the perspective that we have, having been around for a little while, is the excitement that this is instilling in people is the feeling that I had back in 98, 99 when I started realizing sort of what it was we were all working in and where the potential lies. I don't know if you remember, whoever has been doing this for a while, there was a sense that every week there was something new, and it might have puttered out, it might have become something big, but it was that excitement of constant evolution and newness. And I think we've been wanting for that for a while. So there's a lot of people that are willing to take the leap, learn what they need to know, and then evolve into a new medium. But I mean, all you have to do is experience it to realize just how powerful it can be.
So it's not just our clients that we have to convince. We have to actually educate our employees at Moxie with that and get them them to really understand. And we're very fortunate that I have a lab where we bring in all the new technology there, and it's much better. I mean, you can try to explain what virtual reality is, but unless you've experienced it, it's just very, very disconnected. I think Chris Milk, probably one of the seminal VR filmmakers right now, he had a great analogy. It's like trying to explain architecture through dance. It's just very, very difficult, right? And so we like to bring clients in, bring our employees in, and I mean, that's account people, that's developers, that's creative, that's planning, that's everyone in, so they know what it is, so they can talk about it smartly to the clients. But we love bringing the clients in too, having innovation days or just a drive-by whenever they're at the agency, and get them to experience it, and we can sit there and explain it, what it's mainly used for, the best way for them to use it, certainly in their industry with that, but it's an education process. It's an education process.
Yeah, I think that experience is key, and I think about some of the experience I had, and one of the best experiences on VR was actually a couple of years ago in Tribeca Film Festival, where actually I was going through the virtual reality, and I noticed that I didn't know where to go, and I noticed that it was one of the few experiences I had where I had control over the narrative. And normally what happens is that people have control, right? When you watch a movie, right, they drive you where you want to go, right? And in the internet website experience, you have that. And here I had it, and I almost didn't even know where to go, and I started exploring and then really creating my own experience. So I think that you need to live it, right, to start actually opening your mind and see the possibilities. And that helps you, opening, right? It's really about opening the mind and taking, having some faith also.
I think you can treat it almost like experiential. And that may be a better way to think about it than looking at it like traditional media, because that's the experience that you're going to be creating, and it's also the right way to think about producing it. I think it's telling that Punch Drunk Productions, the guys who did Sleep No More, are partnering with Samsung and doing everything at Samsung 83. It's about creating an experience more than it is, a traditional media asset.
So once you bring them in and you show them all these great experiences and wow them, how do you wow them into actually buying the project and doing it? So, what are the challenges of having them opt in and to this new technology or new experiences, given the time and cost of it?
I think what you were saying about sort of the practicality, it still has to be connected to something. It can't just be skunkworks cool. And so what we've seen work is selling through convention. So a lot of professional conventions, one of the things you'll see more and more at booths is the VR experience. And it attracts people, it makes people curious. Those who haven't experienced it yet get to try it. And that very action, that sort of invitation in, is a powerful sort of first step. And what we've found convincing with clients is allowing someone to emotionally connect because they're part of something versus simply observe it and read about it. And so for a couple of pharma clients, that means bringing sales teams into their product in a way that they could never otherwise provide through brochure or through site. And that is a level of practicality that completely resonates. And so it really becomes a lead acquisition platform where in order to see the VR, you got to drop your card. You're a lead. I'm going to follow up with you later. It's a very simple transaction. I think it's going to get trickier as we move into projects that are less connected to that sort of physical visitation. But that's one of the easiest ends we've found.
Do you think the adoption rate of these kinds of projects are dependent, will be influenced by like the hardware itself? I mean, you had Google Glass for a while, which was really a head-up display, not AR, and people aren't going to walk around with a HoloLens or a Vive on their head. So do you think that the form factor is going to make a big difference?
100%. I feel like today we're going to look back on the Oculus, and it's going to look like the phone in Wall Street. Where he's holding up the massive block to his head, and we're like, Jesus, look at that thing. So, I mean, we're at that stage, which is fine, but cords hanging off and people bumped into walls and stuff. That's today, but tomorrow is going to be hopefully very different, much more portable.
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is actually the devices, right? That you need to be wearing that big thing. And that's a big barrier, right? But that's going to change very fast. So if you think about technology, how it has changing, if you think about first mobile phone that actually was available in the 80s and took 30 years to actually, right, have mass adoption, and then the smartphones took 7 years, right? So soon we're going to get to actually, a device that will be much more embedded, integrated, right, into our phones, into the platforms, right, itself, and that will actually allow us, to win that barrier. But the time is now, right? I think what's really exciting is that, we're at a point that we can actually make the story of VR. So it's our role to actually educate the clients right now, start actually helping them feel comfortable with, live, experience, open their minds, right, and take advantage of it.
Yeah, I'd say that's the number one question we're getting when we're out talking to clients that are interested in experimenting within the VR and 360 space. And what we're most encouraged about is we have a very close partnership with Google, YouTube, and Daydream. So we will be one of the launch partners in terms of those that they've tapped to create content for the platform. So you can think about a device with a low price point that delivers an awesome experience launching right before the holiday season. I mean, you'd have to think that that's going to make some sort of meaningful impact. And then the Daydream platform itself, they're going to launch this thing with some really great content in there. And then you're reading about Hulu and others that are starting to enter that space. So yes, the devices themselves, I think, are certainly a big part of what's going to drive this moving forward. But the amount of content that's out there to experience isn't quite there yet as well. And I think as you see a lot more content creators entering that space and having that happen in tandem while some of the devices themselves are starting to enter into the marketplace, I think that's when you're going to see a pretty big takeoff. I'm sure everybody saw the Nielsen study that was announced earlier this week, where they said 25% of their 8,000 respondents, if I'm remembering correctly, to the survey, said that they are planning on purchasing some sort of viewing device or hardware within the next 12 months. So that should make a pretty big difference.
I also think when you think about the, I'm sorry, you think about the accessibility of what Google Cardboard tried to do with AR or VR, arguably, I had an interesting negative effect of it. I had a client I was trying to pitch it to, and when I offered him the Oculus, he said, no, I've already tried Cardboard, and I really didn't like it. And I said, okay, well, maybe there's a slightly different version of Cardboard. But he said when he tried Cardboard, he tipped his head and his phone fell out of the slot. So we're at a point where it's a little bit of a rough start, and those of us who like the sort of geeky reality of the potential are going to be patient and love it, and those who are not ready for it are just going to turn it off. But we'll get
to tell them to trust us, right?
Just trust us. That's
Cardboard's going to end up being like the car phone if the Gordon Gekko example is.
Well, this is, I think, the watershed year for virtual reality. We've got the big 3 tethered headsets all coming out, the Vive, Oculus. A little bit later on, the PlayStation VR, which I think will be by far the biggest selling of the tethered headsets. There's 40 million units of the PlayStation out there right now, so if only 10% of those go in, that's 4 million headsets they will sell, and that's coming out, I think, in late October with that, so right in time for the holidays. Daydream, of course, coming out. Google's got a lot of really good technology with that. A lot of content's being created right now. A lot of the Hollywood studios are creating stuff. I know that Fox, one of our clients, created for The Martian and for Star Trek. They're doing that right now. Just a lot of great content is getting pushed out there right now, and I think it bodes really well for virtual reality. And augmented reality, I think more and more content's going to come out of that too, because we've all got smartphones. Everybody, see several people looking at them right now. So you have a virtual reality and an augmented reality device readily available. So it's really just about pushing the right content for people out.
So the next question is really, it's kind of a two-part question. The first is, entertainment is the obvious industry for especially virtual reality, to some extent augmented reality. What are other industries that you think could benefit from these experiences? And then the next question, that is, does your approach and your approach to creating that content or creating that experience differ from, you talk about pharmaceuticals versus entertainment, so.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. I think you could also make a pretty good argument for travel being a category that absolutely is ripe for great VR and AR experiences. We worked with Travel Australia earlier this year, more so as a distribution platform than a creative partner. They created, this amazing opportunity where you're bringing somebody virtually to Australia, diving off the Great Barrier Reef. So thinking about just tourism boards in general, I mean, if you're not thinking about creating VR content and you're in that space, you're probably not very good at your job because it's just such a no-brainer. And then automotive is the other one. Every single automotive brand that we work with in terms of advertising partners is asking us question, and we've actually done work for our third automotive brand, one of which was with Honda around the IndyCar effort this year. So Honda quietly created the fastest two-seater IndyCar on the planet, and they wanted to stabilize that. So they gave the viewer, the experience of actually sitting in the car, whizzing around the track, doing 200 miles per hour. So I think from landed on very hot and verticals.
Where we have seen a lot of traction, actually, it's in retail. So we do a lot of work with our retail clients, actually creating new experiences. So that's where we're seeing a lot, really maximizing, helping them to engage. Another area that's interesting is manufacturing, where actually you start showing, the beauty, right, the magic of what it is really manufacturing that people don't understand, and bringing them into a world that part of it, you don't know what it is. So that becomes actually very interesting too, and that's what we're seeing right now.
So I think that education is going to be transformed by virtual reality. It's one thing to read in a textbook about history, but when a child can go back and experience that, be in the middle of that history, it changes the amount that they learn, retain, and gives them a better appreciation for what that means.
And when we came in, I took my rock in history class in a way I hadn't was possible because he cared and he was engaged. Remember, and taught him so experience work. Also, travel without Airbnb. Imagine being able to send to Airbnb client a product that you send room, scan it, spatialize it, throw it up on the web, and walk through it before you go. And that's not going to be far away. That's going to happen, I think, relatively quickly. In automotive, I mean, the crazy thing about automotive is all they want to dealership. I went to I took in the IR. It was as proud as it can be. Migration 0 miles an hour in less than a second.
It's quiet.
It feels great in traffic. So, any dealership is give you, they want to give you a huge opportunity. So. Yeah.
Cultural experiences to communities and to other parts of the world that may not be used to the kinds of technologies and the experiences that we take for granted. Like for Africa, for example, is the fastest growing market for mobile. I mean, how can you piggyback off that and expand these experiences? And then what are the considerations? Are there any cultural considerations for the kinds of things and content that you design?
Yeah, well, I'm sure there are cultural considerations on that. Like I said before, and you just mentioned Africa is the fast growing with smartphones, and right now I think there are 3 or 3.5 or maybe even 4 billion people on the planet that don't have smartphones. So it could be as simple as something like Cardboard or Daydream, right? That Cardboard, obviously very inexpensive. Certainly if you can get somebody to sponsor that, send that out. And I guess the low end of VR, which is not really VR, but 360 videos, you can obviously see those on that. I think it's going to be transformational for non-first world. I think it's also going to be, on the flip side of that, transformational for us to experience what they live. And I think, look back at it, you kind of laugh because it was all the stitching. You can see it everywhere, but it was this, I think it was an event, a big event. He showed it to the UN and I think at Davos with that, and it just made people sit up and take notice of that in a way that just telling or watching a regular film could never do.
I think education experience that's not limited to the class you have in your town. I mean, if you're able to, jack into fill in the blank school around the world, online courseware takes on a completely different experience when you think about it. So huge cultural opportunity.
I think there is a big opportunity if you think about social causes and brands that actually tie themselves to social causes. An example is what the New York Times did, just allowing us to understand what is about to be a refugee and live like a refugee. What we have no idea, right? We really cannot, know what that is. So by the fact that you can be them on those people's shoes to a certain extent, it really opens, right, for you to take action and actually to tie yourself to causes and to brands. And I think that's a big opportunity. And especially, I think that we'll leverage virtual reality in a little bit more controlled educational environment. So this is a big industry, in my opinion.
I was just going to add to what Jerry was saying about I'm really excited for when VR content production is something that's attainable by a lot of people. Like when DSRs revolutionized indie filmmaking and got everybody shooting something and storytelling and release content online. Like when does the months of stitching and post go away and the camera is really cheap and easy to use, and then you have a whole wealth of people who are deeply creative and can share their cultural experience. That'll help, I think, close the gap that we might experience for the next 5 years who aren't on the platform or aren't being spoken to.
So what's your advice for brands who want to either do a project in AR, VR, or for agencies who don't have this experience that want to get their feet wet to stay competitive? Maybe.
I mean, prototype. The storyboards just don't do it. You can storyboard for your own team as you develop a prototype, but you gotta, just get into Unity, get into your platform, and start developing something, because that's the only thing that's really going to convince anyone of anything. I think it's good to have strategy around it. I mean, the same rules apply for any kind of campaign or creative, but you have to let them sit and feel it and understand it. And I think, especially now, since it is still in the novel mode, we're not cynical about it yet, which I'm sure in 15, 20 years, we'll all be like, yeah, whatever. It's probably never going to be true. It's always going to grow. But I think you really need to have people experience it.
Yeah, I think that like you said, you just have to prototype it. Do something internally if you're an agency, or do some pro bono work for somebody. A cause, whether it's somebody like the American Cancer Society, Humane Society, anybody like that. Just go out and say, hey, we're going to test this out. We'll do it for free. Do that. All the hardware that we have right now, really just kind of stopgaps. Everything's going to get smaller, faster, better, cheaper. With that, certainly the hardware that you wear will do that, and we've seen over the past year certainly the evolution of the cameras that you use to shoot the live cinematic VR. So yeah, just do it. You just do it. It's going to be big.
When I think about brands, and actually, when I talk to my clients, what I actually tell them is, don't think about VR as a technology, right? Think about VR as a way to bring an immersive experience and to generate that feeling. And brand people have been doing that all the time, right? But if you think about a technology, then, it kind of deviates, right, from what you need to do. So that's what I use, how I try to actually, help my clients open their minds. And then, of course, the experience is key, right? And then it's a whole education, right, from what you need to do to how you execute, right? When you should be thinking about the ambience, you need to be thinking about, it's a totally different experience. You're not shooting, right, one specific thing. So, you need to be working very close also with the client to make them feel comfortable.
I kind of have a two-part, and they're both really hard questions, which is one, to really know and be honest with yourself why you're doing it, and let that motivate the choices around it, and then to make it part of a comprehensive strategy that uses other existing media that are far more wide-reaching. So how does after that person gets out of a VR or AR experience, where do they go? What are you giving them to do on social? How can they advocate for it? How can they spread it? How can they share it? That type of conversation has to be a part of it also.
What's your advice to people who want to work in this space, who don't have the experience, which few people do, and it's not really taught in schools much? So it's, coming from whether it's an agency model or media companies, people at all skill sets, all paths in their career. What do I do to get started in working this?
I mean, download the SDK, get a developer kit. It's unfortunately relatively prohibitively expensive. My advice also, based on personal experience, is do not get the lowest possible configured computer. Something what someone will put together. So and you go out and experience it. Play with it yourself. Become fascinated and obsessed. And you can create a white room with some plants and a couch in about 5 minutes. So it's a pretty easy thing to get at the start, and then talk to your 3D modeling friends and get them to start creating an object and play this. So just put it on, and I think you'll be hooked.
I think it's interesting when you think it's very far sometimes, but actually if you Google at Amazon, right, if you go to Amazon and actually look for devices, there are more than 1,000 devices for VR. And I always encourage people that want to get it but think it's really far. No, just go and do some research, right? Google is doing a lot in this area. There are so many Kickstarters projects in this area. So it's, it's closer. Go do some research, experience, and look for the name of people that are doing it. Come talk to us, right? We have that, their expertise is actually VR at Sapien. Go look for people. I mean, be entrepreneurial, because it's still in an entrepreneurial mode, right? So have that attitude and make it happen.
And just one quick thing before we go to questions, 3 or 4 word prediction, starting with you, Timothy, and where we're going to be, what we're going to see in 5 years.
3 or 4 year prediction. I have no idea.
No crystal ball, but I think it's going to happen very fast. I think just, the integration into platforms and devices and, just being more friendly, I think it's going to happen fast. But how many years? I'll go ask my crystal ball later.
Tinder VR.
That's next year.
Google, Facebook, Samsung.
I thought you were going to say end of print. No.
I'm responsible for digital.
More than 5 words, I'm sorry. But the disappearance of the hardware that you wear to experience VR and AI-created cinematic experiences in VR.
Okay. Just raise your hand if you have a question. We'll bring a mic to you. Quick question, if you could, before I run around the room here. Can you tell me what you're getting from clients? I know that the agencies obviously are taking a long lead for this, but when the clients, if they buy in, if you have any that say, hey, they're initiating it, what are they looking for as a result? Is it more prototype experimentation, or are they starting to look at any kind of metrics? And if so, what might those look like?
I think it's really early for metrics. IAB just put out a report on Monday that it was their first, I think, VR, and it was very surface. It was like, what is this? Let's define things. There's really nothing. I mean, there's some measurement of time and attention. There's some field of view measurements that you can look at within the experience, but I think then you start to try and just map traditional KPIs onto the experience.
I think clients would love to have metrics, and they ask for, but reality is we still don't have it. That's a barrier, right? So, that's something we need to work.
Yeah, and Daniela shared the example before of retail. So we've had a number of recent conversations with retail brands who want to get into that space, and they keep struggling with, how do I take this down the line and demonstrate ROI to my CMO? And I think we will see in the not too distant future the ability to create a hotspot within a retail commercial environment within a VR experience. And you can think about, let's say you're on a Daydream platform. Within the Daydream device, you are logged into your Gmail account, and as you're getting some sort of experience on behalf of a retail brand and there's a cool product in there, maybe you can point and say, drop more information to me through Gmail or whatever that ultimately looks like. I think it's going to have to get to that point for those in the retail space or those that are just looking to really demonstrate an immediate ROI against it.
Okay, I have a question over here. And on your question, if you can give your name and organization first, because this is all being live streamed, and it will be on the MediaPost website by tomorrow, all the videos. So here we go.
Hi, Steve Ib from AdVR. So I have a question, I guess, for everybody. Right now, VR is a very nascent technology, whatever. So a lot of people are very interested to check out a brand's VR application, VR experience, et cetera. They're discovering it on their own. But I guess in 2 years' time, is it going to look more like the App Store where you have to give some kind of incentive, user acquisition, these kind of things in order to get people to even check out the VR experience? And also number two is that VR right now seems to be a little bit of an experience that people need to want to do rather than watch a video on their Facebook feed or watch television. They have to put on the headset, they have to be prompted, they have to download the app. The platforms aren't caught up yet. So I guess what are some hurdles that you see right now when the user loses the novelty aspect? Do brands still invest into VR? Is there going to be kind of a, this kind of long-term game plan?
Can I kind of in that vein, I've been thinking about this in preparation for today, and I think right now anyway, I kind of think of VR as karaoke. It's something like there's very few people who are willing to pay the amount of money to have the equipment to be able to do it at home. That's right now it's sort of a unique experience. You have to go somewhere to do it. But today, now there's an app on the App Store, Musically, that has 50 million users under the age of 21. So I think if I can sort of use that as a metaphor or parallel for where VR might go, yeah, it's still a novelty, and it's still the big brands that are there that can put out their own platform that can carry the whole load of creating a VR experience. But when the technology starts to proliferate, and then you have an app store type situation, that's when you'll see brands that pop up that provide the most meaningful experience, bringing consumers on.
I mean, and the App Store experience that you noted, I mean, there's so much crap on all the major platform most people are like, whip something up. It might be terrible, but at least we can plan, flagging this in and say we have something. And I think the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to have to weed those out. But it's probably going to be a similar App Store way, Google Play and Apple App Store work. So we'll see how that goes.
Just a thought I thought was interesting. You mentioned Musically because that's such a popular actually app with girls, right, between 8 to 12, and they don't think that as a VR experience. That's the experience they live, right?
Hi, Jake from Pop. What do you think the opportunity is in VR for video versus 3D graphics a la Unity? And where do you see the opportunities going?
I mean, it's sort of the being there experience. Steve Wozniak always talks about how he watches every basketball game he can in VR. And, it's like having courtside seats. So I think video will always have the scale experience as long as the resolution continues to rise. I mean, we're going to need to get probably double Oculus resolution before we get to really believable, high fidelity, real world experience. But I think video will always have a place. And, 360 video, I think when integrated into an experience can be really novel and wonderful. To assume that all corners of a 360 experience are going to be interesting is probably missing the point of 360. There's always going to be a focal point. You think about what sports are going to do, broadcast potential for what an AC sports might come out to, be in the full, be on the ice, I don't know, put a VR camera on a hockey puck. I mean, there's a million cool options for how video can get deployed, but I think resolution is going to be the key to be convincing.
That would make me sick.
I think that is it. Thanks everyone for coming. We'll be around if you have any other questions, but this is very informative, and thanks to all the panelists. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great job. Thank you, Eric. Great off. As you can see, this stuff is not simple. We're all here, obviously. In Absolute, in London and New York. Importantly and significantly, this is breaking news here, he's also book coming out, which is now available for pre-order on Amazon. It's called Good is the New Cool, How Capitalism Can Save the World. Please join me in welcoming Aftal.
Hi, everybody. How's it going? You have a... Very much. So today I'm going to talk about Absolute Labs and how you create the conditions to make great VR, I think. So I'm going to go behind the scenes in how we set up labs, talk a little bit about process and kind of some of the steps that we took to set up what is Absolute's internal marketing innovation unit, which looks at VR, AR, Internet of Things, wearable tech, all that fun stuff as well. So I really, first of all, yes, mandatory product placement. This is the book. It's now changed to Market Like You Give a Damn, which is the subtitle, and available for pre-order now on Amazon. The book is really my attempt to explore how brands can create compelling experiences, physical experiences, digital experiences. That's kind of fun that I get to do that in my side hustle and in my job as well. So talk about failure and how that really was a catalyst to starting Absolute Labs in the first place. So about 2 years ago, we were involved in a project with Lady Gaga performing in space. Do you guys remember any of this? Any about her talking about being the first artist to perform from zero gravity? No, you wouldn't have, because it failed. Right? So we spent, I'll show you the picture. This is a beautiful picture to look at. This has never seen the light of day. This was going to be the key visual for this project. This is Gaga in a Donatella Versace spacesuit shot by Terry Richardson. Looks fabulous. We were 8 months into this project where she was going to go up in a Virgin Galactic spacecraft. I was on vacation in Sri Lanka with my wife, and we were in a departure lounge at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and she elbowed me in the ribs and she said, "Look at CNN." And I look at CNN and I see this, and we have to kind of scramble to fix a major hole in our commercial cycle. This was about to become like our summer retail program with a lot of money, a lot of investment behind it. So that was what led us to really thinking about this essential problem of innovation that companies have. Breakthrough innovation can't happen within organizations that are designed to run really efficiently, which have a lot of process and dependencies and KPIs to hit. So that was really our catalyst to say, all right, let's create a space outside of the normal day-to-day where we can experiment and take some risks. Coupled with that, I think you guys must see this all the time. We're seeing massive disruption to the traditional advertising model. So hands up, everyone here who uses ad blocking software. All right, that's pretty representative of the audiences I speak to. Actually, with marketers, it's usually more than 50% of people, which is ironic. But you see this rise that's happening. 200 million people to date using ad blocking software, which means that consumers are sending a clear signal. They don't want to see the stuff that we create. Coupled with that is this situation where all of this of disruption is causing insecurity and anxiety in our business leaders. When you look at the stats about business leaders being prepared to deal with change, there's not a lot of confidence there in being able to deal with all this new disruption that's happening because of technology. So that really was the catalyst. Spacecraft crashing, disruption, and the need to try and find a space where we could look ahead, get out of the next 18 months and look at the next 5, 10 years and see what that held in terms of marketing to consumers as well. So that's why we set up labs. It's a very skinny operation, so it works almost like a startup within the Absolute organization, which means I have no budgets. I have to pitch for everything. And that's good, because it makes us a lot skinnier and scrappier and agile and nimble and all those words, which mean you have no budget. So I'll talk a little bit about how, if you're thinking about doing this, some of the things that you should consider. So I'll talk about your organization, technology, and change, and use Absolute as an example. You have to start with the purpose of your organization. Why do you exist as a brand or a business? For Absolute, our purpose is to serve people within nightlife, It is there to make connections. We're very inclusive, open, tolerant, progressive, and so really about making the world a more open-minded place. So keep that in mind as we start to talk about VR and how that has a potential to actually be quite isolating as a technology. It's a big kind of point that we had to grapple with. Secondly, look inward and think about how what you're doing can elevate the business that you're in. So the good news was Absolute was already quite innovative as a brand, but what we were talking about was mood. Now, you're driving car, because I don't have budgets that Google has, but this is really thinking about what is 10x the norm, what is 10x what is right now, and how does a brand kind of utilize that technology to get there. And finally, really think outward about how you can use this. And it was really about inspiring greater social connections within this space that we had chosen, which is nightlife. This really helped our positioning. We talked about labs being at the intersection of art, music, and technology. Art, always part of Absolute's heritage. So hands up everybody who used to have an Absolute poster, or new poster hanging in their dorm room or something like that. Okay. We had to think about art and the heritage we had there. Had to think about music. If we're a nightlife brand, music is the fuel for nightlife. And finally, technology is that third layer that we well together. So we knew where we wanted to operate as a brand. And we knew that we wanted to create products and utilities and experiences that operated at that intersection as well. So one of the first things we did was actually go off and commission some research. This is called The State of Nightlife. It's a white paper. It's available to download for anybody. We went and talked to 100 people working in nightlife. So technologists, DJs, creators, people who created some amazing spectacles and said, what's good, what's bad, and how can a brand like Absolute help make it better? And that really gave us a roadmap to think about all the different opportunities that we could get involved in. It really boils down to a series of moments within someone's night out. There is the pre-gaming. You guys are all smiling. You guys are like, this is what you did last night, wasn't it? There's the pre-gaming where you get together for a few drinks before you go out. Then you're in the moment. That could be at somebody's house or it could be in the club. And then there's what I call the morning after the night before, which is where you look at the memories and go, I can't believe I posted that on Instagram. Delete, delete, delete. So here were all the opportunities where we could get involved as a brand to help make nightlife better. This was the process we used to quickly experiment and iterate and figure out how to develop stuff. So I think the last panel talked about prototyping. We did a lot of that. It starts with an divide the with the could be prototype, and then using that to get learn and scale it up a step. Every step of the way, thinking about whether to pivot or preserve, which I'll talk about, the thing that we did with Dead Mouse and the virtual reality concept, until you finally get to a point where you think it's big enough that, okay, step off the way. All right. So I'm going to talk to you about absolute reality. So this is where we got our feet wet. We had this insight, less than sold out, or you weren't fast enough, or you weren't. Interesting problem with our inclusive experiences to people who couldn't get access before. So the first thing we did was go buy some really tiny VR cameras. So the things in the middle are Ricoh Thetas, for those who don't know. They're like $120. They're not very expensive. We just went and shot stuff in clubs and try to figure out what's that experience in VR, whether anybody was interested in seeing the inside of a nightclub. The answer is no. Nobody cares about seeing other people having fun inside a club, right? So that's what led to us coming up with this next project, which I'm going to play a video about, and I'll talk to you about what we did later. It was with a band called Bob Moses, and we tried to do what we think was the first live virtual reality concert. So hopefully when I click this, video will play. So that was something we did last June in New York City at a club called Output in Williamsburg. This is a band called Bob Moses. Can we move to the slide, guys? So this is a band called Bob Moses, who sold out a 400-person room in minutes. And so we went to them and said, can we put a VR camera in the front row of your concert? And then can we give away Google Cardboard headsets to your fans? And so we gave away 5,000 headsets. They disappeared in about 2 hours. We shipped them all across the country to the fans of the band. And what happened next was surprising, I think, for us. So at 8:30 p.m. on a Friday night, we live streamed an entire 90-minute concert. At that point, YouTube and Facebook weren't doing 360 video. So we actually had to create an app. It's still available. It's called iOS, Android. Work with a live video stitching software. So we're doing it in real time to stitch a perfect sphere. And then we work with Akamai to upload it to 46,000 servers globally. So anyone, theoretically anyone, anywhere could watch this live stream as well. What really surprised us was that the fans self-organized into 600 or so viewing parties. They invited people to come to their living rooms and watch it together. Crucially, we sent out the Google Cardboards in packs of 3. So we kind of almost engineered it, socially engineered it to make sure that people invited their friends. The average viewing time was 19 minutes of people watching this content. So if you think about the struggle brands have with getting somebody to watch like a 10-second pre-roll, 19 minutes we thought was a pretty good metric in terms of brand engagement with what is technically branded content as well. So that really gave us the confidence to go, okay, this is pretty cool. Now, how can we scale this as well? The problem with scaling a live event is that thing that you're scaling has to be universally loved enough to then 10x that people. And we weren't sponsoring the Olympics, Super Bowl, or anything like that. So the first pivot we made was really saying, okay, this could be interesting where we take somebody on a nightlife journey. We go out with a pretty famous DJ and follow him around on a night out. So that's what led to the project that we launched in June of this year called Absolute Dead Mouse. So hands up everybody who knows Dead Mouse. Dude with the large ears. He is an amazing electronic music producer and a DJ. He has 9 million fans on Facebook, and he's rapidly into technology as well. So version 1 of this was really, it's like, can we follow you around and kind of, shoot stuff in your studio, in your out, and it was almost going to be like a music video brought to life, but in 360. Where it became really interesting was Unit 9, the production company, came back to us and said, he's a crazy gamer, so why don't we just make a video game with him in it? And we went, okay, you could do that, okay. And because he's a crazy gamer, Dead Mouse really loved this idea. So we put him in Toronto. We turned him into a video game avatar. And I'm going to play you a little video and then talk about what happened next. So that was the absolute deadass game which launched in June of this year. It's available on iOS and Android. It's available on Oculus and Samsung Gear VR as well. It launched to massive publicity. I think we were lucky. I think we were the week before Pokemon Go. Thank God. But it was really well received by the fans and by the press, and created a huge amount of buzz for us as well. So what it is a 10-minute immersive virtual reality game where you start off in his studio in live action. He gets a phone call from his manager going, "You're late for your gig, get your ass in the car." And as he walks out of the door, he goes from being live action into being a video game character. And then you are using the native motion of a Google Cardboard or a headset to drive a car, to make him argue with bouncers, to make him leap over crates and dodge fans who want to take selfies with him. And then your reward at the end of it is you get to stand next to him in the DJ booth for 2 minutes while he plays the track that he composed for us for this collaboration as well. He really was really pleased with it. We were really pleased with it. And for us, it really showed you what happened when you keep trying to raise the bar of what you can do with the brand experience. The numbers have been great, and the immersiveness of again, people want to spend time in what is a brand experience, to the point about experiential, is fantastic. If you go and download the game and play it, the branding is very subtle in there. For example, when you're driving the car, the skyscrapers on the horizon are in the shape of the Absolute bottle. Or if you run past a doorway, you see subtle hints everywhere. So to me, it really kind of brings the theory of what I was saying in the book to life. People start thinking about it as advertising. And people will tell their friends about it and kind of immerse themselves in the world. So some final thoughts, if you're thinking about this, to watch out for. Do I have permission and time to experiment and fail? So there's a lot of stuff that we did that never got this far. We had to kill very quickly because it was a terrible idea. But we created a space. We could have terrible ideas as well. We still in a different way to the normal way a brand the size of Absolute works, where you have a briefing process with your integrated agency teams, and you give them 6 weeks to come back with a big idea, but instead work in these really fast creative sprints. And then metrics is a really important one as well. This was a combination of traditional metrics like PR buzz, social media buzz, but also things which we'd never talked about before, like the length of immersiveness in a game world for a brand as well. So making sure you have the right metrics, I think, is really crucial. So finally, what can a marketing innovation lab do? It can enable your organization to think like a startup, really create this culture of innovation, create new ways of working, and solve problems in consumers' lives as well. To me, the quote that really sums it up is this one: the best way to predict the future is to invent it. Thank you very much.
One question, can you talk about a little internal culture, how you get, before they saw this, obviously, at the beginning, I'm sure you must have had people saying, VR what? Yeah. How do you get through, can you describe how you get through that? And then how the organization internally looks at this now? Are you taking budgets out of TV advertising because this is obviously a payback?
No. I think, by the way, the greatest selling tool to get VR bought in internally is to put a headset on people. That's what I spend a lot of time doing. Put it on finance people, especially.
Finance people?
CFOs.
You can do that?
Yeah, of course. You go, come here, watch this. Or lawyers. They were the other people I had to spend a lot of time with. I think showing people the immersive nature of VR makes them into believers. And that actually helps win a lot of arguments and get a lot of traction as well. And the answer is sadly, no, I'm not taking bites out of TV budgets, though I wish I was. Other questions?
Other questions?
Yeah. Marketing's great. What were some of the other, in terms of monetizing it? You talked about the startup at the beginning, and it's how much money are we putting in our companies into innovation?
Yeah.
Did you partner to keep the budget?
Yeah, actually, so we structured a deal with deadmau5, which I can't go into the terms of, but one of the aspects of it was also monetizing the Google Cardboard headsets. So I don't know if you guys spotted in the video, but we made limited edition absolute deadmau5 headsets. And so it's almost like a merchandising deal with the music industry. Now, the 6 months since we started the project was that the price of Google Cardboards plummeted. So that messed up a lot of the monetization plans that we had. It's just the way the market went at that point. But we were trying, if we could have monetized the content, we would have. But there doesn't really exist a market for people paying lots of money for VR content. So we tried to monetize the headsets and had some limited success, I would say, with that. Oh, and to your other point about metrics, certainly creating a buzz and a halo effect around Absolute to show we were a nightlife brand, we are a progressive brand, all of that ticked all the boxes. I think, to me, I was looking at the Oculus numbers this morning, it's the level of immersiveness. It's the level of time people spend in what is a branded world, which I think is really going to be the long tail, if you will, of this project. As more and more VR content comes online, hopefully this content is going to be so good that people keep playing with it even in a year from now as well.
Back here.
Woo! It's as an alcohol brand, how did you work with like LDA compliance and making sure that your users were over 21, or was that not a barrier for you?
Yes, it is, yes.
So how do you accomplish that?
Remember the bit when I said I put the headsets on lots of lawyers? That's what I had to do to convince them this is legit. So yeah, there is age gating every step of the way. There is age gating in the App Store, there is age gating on the app itself. All the communication that we did to promote it, so we did Facebook, buys and things like that, those were all targeted to 21 plus. So you are able to, target a universe of people who are completely LDA compliant. You just have to take a lot of steps to do that.
Aftel, thank you very much.
Cool, thank you guys.
Great stuff, thank you. We're gonna take a short break now, and then we're gonna come back and hear some more serious content about where all this stuff is going. See you in 10 minutes.